Stella, what the hell is this?
There is no such thing as a break to cool off in a marriage, Ji-hoon. You could have taken a vacation for 3 days and continued, or you move out of my way, totally. I hope your break was worth it. Please sign the divorce papers. I have a wedding to plan.
Stella Kim stood in the marble foyer of the penthouse that had once been their shared sanctuary, the divorce papers crisp in her manicured hand. 8 weeks. That was all it had taken for her Korean husband to unravel the life they'd built. Now the man who had asked for space to think was staring at her like she was a stranger wearing his wife's face. Ji-hoon's keys clattered onto the console table. "Stella, what the hell is this?" She smiled, slow and sharp as a blade. "There is no such thing as a break to cool off in a marriage, Ji-hoon. You could have taken a vacation for 3 days and continued, or you could move out of my way. Totally. I hope your break was worth it." She extended the papers. "Please sign the divorce papers. I have a wedding to plan. Hi there. Are you just tuning in for the first time? You are welcome to Premium Stories. Don't forget to binge, subscribe, comment, like, and share. I will definitely appreciate it. Enough of me already. Let's get into the real game. Happy watching." Stella had not come to Seoul to fall in love. She had come to build something. At 27, she arrived in Korea with a vision, a contact list, and the specific stubbornness of a woman from Atlanta who had been told since childhood that the world would make room for her whether it wanted to or not. She had launched her gallery in Itaewon on almost nothing, spending the first year sleeping on a cot in the back office, eating convenience store kimbap for dinner, and spending every available hour learning enough Korean to negotiate her own contracts without a middleman. By 29, the gallery had its first international press. By 31, it was one of the most respected contemporary art spaces in East Asia, the kind of institution that serious collectors flew in to visit. Kim Ji-hoon found her at an art fair in Busan in the way that men like him find things they want, by noticing and moving decisively. He was a rising executive at a major tech conglomerate, ambitious and refined, with a sharp jaw, and the kind of focused attention that felt, when it was directed at you, like being lit up from the inside. He spoke excellent English with the careful precision of someone who had worked at it, and he asked questions about her exhibition that proved he had actually been looking rather than performing interest. Their courtship was the kind that makes good stories. Late-night ramen in places that didn't have English menus, weekend ferries to Jeju, arguments about art and culture that lasted until 3 a.m. and ended in bed. Interracial marriage in Korea came with stares in restaurants and family events that required a kind of social armor she had not anticipated. But their love had felt bulletproof in the way that love feels when you are new to it and haven't yet discovered all the ways the world chips away at things. They married in a blended ceremony that her grandmother flew in from Atlanta to witness. Korean traditions and Southern Black ones, woven together in a single afternoon that made both sets of grandparents cry for different reasons. For 3 years, it was genuinely good. Then came the cracks. His hours lengthened. Her success grew in ways that seemed, though he never said this directly, to make him feel measured against something. The cultural frictions they had once treated as interesting differences hardened into points of recurring friction. His family had never fully embraced her. Not with hostility, but with a particular persistent distance that communicated, without ever stating, that she remained an outsider in the structure of their expectations. Her friends back home asked, with increasing frequency, whether she was losing herself. The argument that started the 8 weeks was about all of those things, and none of them specifically, the surface grievance of her schedule and his loneliness covering the deeper architecture of a marriage that had been quietly coming apart for over a year. "You're never here," Ji-hoon said, pacing the living room in his loosened tie, the city spread behind him through floor-to-ceiling glass. Between the gallery openings and the investor dinners, "I feel like I'm married to a concept of you, not the actual you." "So your solution," Stella said, arms crossed, her dark skin catching the warm light of the room they had chosen together, "is to ask for a break. Like we are 22 and dating casually. Like our vows had an opt-out clause I missed. 8 weeks. No contact. We both reset." His voice cracked on the last word, just enough to make her hesitate. "I love you, Stella, but I don't know if I can keep doing this without something changing." She looked at him for a long time. At this man she had married in front of both their families, whose names she had taken, whose country she had made her home. And she made the decision that she would later understand was the only possible one, even though it cost her everything in the short term. "Fine," she said. 8 weeks. She had let him go. Packed a suitcase for him herself while tears burned behind her eyes. When the door closed, the silence hit her like something physical. The first week she cried in the shower before work, consistently at 6 a.m., where the sound of the water covered it. The second week she buried herself so completely in a new exhibition negotiation, a reclusive Japanese artist whose work she had been chasing for 2 years, that she went 48 hours barely sleeping and did not notice the grief because there was no available space for it. The third week, the apartment itself became the problem. She had been avoiding his study. Not consciously, she simply had no reason to go in there with him gone. and the door stayed closed, and she walked past it each morning on her way to the kitchen without registering the avoidance for what it was. On a Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks into the 8, she went in to retrieve a contract she had emailed to the shared printer in there. She found the contract. She also found a folder she had never seen before, wedged between 2 architecture books on the second shelf, the kind of placement that suggested it had been put there to be accessible without being obvious. She would not have found it if she hadn't reached for the book beside it, which the contract had slid behind. Inside the folder, a lease agreement. An apartment in Mabo District, 18 months old, signed by Ji-hoon and a woman named Seo Ye-jin. Monthly payments drafted from an account she had not known existed. Below the lease, photographs, a woman, young, Korean, pretty in an uncomplicated way, a baby boy in several of them, dark-haired and round-cheeked, clearly several months old in the most recent. On the back of one photograph, in Ji-hoon's handwriting, not a note, just a date and a name. Seo Jin, 8 months ago. Their marriage had been deteriorating for a year. The baby had been born 8 months ago. The math arranged itself without her permission. Stella sat in her husband's study with the folder open in her lap and did something she had not expected. She did not cry. She had cried for 3 weeks over the loss of a marriage she now understood she had never fully had. The tears had already been spent on a grief that turned out to be for the wrong thing. What arrived now was different, colder, more total, the specific clarity of a woman who has just had her own perception restored to her after a long, disorienting time of doubting it. All the late nights, all the distance, all the careful, gentle ways he had made the deterioration her responsibility, her schedule, her success, her inability to make him feel adequately prioritized. All of it reframed in the light of this folder with the same completeness that white balance corrects a photograph. She put the folder exactly where she had found it. She went back to the kitchen and finished her coffee and called her lawyer. She flew to Florence 3 days later because the Japanese artist's representative had suggested meeting in person, and because she needed to put physical distance between herself and the penthouse before she did something she couldn't undo. The private auction at the villa outside the city was the kind of event she attended now without registering as remarkable. Extraordinary pieces, extraordinary people, the thin air of serious money and serious taste. She was there for the work, cataloging mentally, making notes, operating on the professional competence that had never once failed her, regardless of what her personal life was doing. Alessandro Moretti, she noticed the way you notice a weather change. Not a specific moment of awareness, but a gradual, accumulating shift in the quality of the room. He was standing near a sculpture by a controversial Nigerian artist when she first placed him, 6'4", charcoal suit, the kind of physical presence that didn't require performance because it simply was. Olive skin, dark hair worn slightly longer than business formal, eyes that were watching the sculpture with genuine attention rather than the studied appreciation people adopted at these events to signal taste. Later, she would learn that he had spent a decade quietly acquiring African contemporary art through anonymous foundations specifically because he believed, as he told her in their first real conversation, that value and visibility were not the same thing and the market had confused them badly. Their eyes met. He inclined his head slightly, not a greeting exactly, more an acknowledgement, the kind that passes between people who recognize something in each other without yet knowing what it is. He did not approach her that evening. He appeared on the terrace the following afternoon where she was reviewing auction notes with a glass of wine, and sat at the adjacent table with a book and his own glass, and did not speak to her for 20 minutes. When he finally did, he said, "The piece in the second room. You looked at it for 11 minutes, longer than anything else in the auction." She looked at him. "You were timing me? I was watching you work." His voice was low and unhurried, carrying an accent that mixed Italian with something else, something she couldn't immediately locate. "There's a difference. You look at things like you intend to understand them, not own them. In that room tonight, that made you unusual." "How do you know my name?" she asked, because he had used it. "I make it my business to know interesting people." A pause. "Especially those brave enough to love in the places the world tells them not to." She looked at him steadily. "That's a very specific thing to say to a stranger. You're not entirely a stranger," he said. "Your gallery's Busan exhibition 2 years ago. I saw the program. I've been aware of your work since then. When I saw your name on the guest list, I was curious to see whether you matched your reputation." He picked up his wine. "You exceed it." She said nothing for a moment. Something in her chest was doing something she had not felt in a long time. Not the performed warmth she had been giving Ji-hoon for the last year of a marriage running on empty, but something involuntary, something that required active management. "My husband asked for a break," she said. She didn't know why she said it. Possibly because she needed to say it out loud to someone who had no stake in the answer. He looked at her. And I found out why while he was gone. A silence. He didn't offer sympathy, didn't perform understanding, didn't ask questions. He simply received what she had said with the same full attention he had given the sculpture in the auction room. "I'm sorry," he said finally. Not as a courtesy, actually. She believed him, which surprised her. He did not move quickly. This was the thing she had not expected. From a man whose reputation suggested he was accustomed to taking what he wanted with efficiency. Over the remaining days in Florence, he was present without pressure. He found reasons to be in the same rooms, not engineering accidents, simply existing in proximity and letting whatever would develop do so at its own pace. He asked about her gallery, her artists, the specific vision she had for what contemporary art from the diaspora could mean in the global market, and he listened to her answers with the focused attention of someone who was genuinely interested in the ideas, rather than the performance of interest. She told him over dinner the third evening about the folder in Ji-hoon's study. She had not planned to. It emerged the way things emerge in conversations with people who know how to listen. Gradually, honestly, without the editing she applied to what she shared with people who had an investment in her being okay. He listened to all of it without interruption. He built a parallel life, she said. While I was trying to figure out what I was doing wrong in ours, he had a child with someone else, an apartment, a whole other shape of a life, running alongside mine for over a year, and he asked for a break, Sandro said, to manage it. Not to think about your marriage, to manage what was already built elsewhere. She hadn't framed it exactly that way yet. The precision of it arrived like something settling into its correct position. "Yes," she said, "that's exactly what it was. And you're angry." "I'm past angry," she said. "Anger requires something left to salvage. I'm completely clear." He looked at her across the table. "Then why are you still sad?" She opened her mouth, closed it, because she had not admitted the sadness yet, had been operating on the clarity and the cold purpose of it, and the question arrived so directly that there was no useful deflection available. "Because I loved him," she said. "The version of him I thought I had. I loved that marriage. I was trying to save something I didn't know was already a lie." He nodded, didn't minimize it, didn't rush toward the silver lining, didn't offer comfort that would have been premature. He simply let the truth of what she'd said exist in the air between them. She thought about that for a long time afterward. He walked her to her villa door that night, no attempt at anything, a good night, his eyes on hers for a moment that lasted a beat longer than necessary, and then he was gone. She stood inside the door and pressed her back against it and breathed and felt something in the architecture of her grief rearrange itself into something that was not yet hope, but was adjacent to it. He sent flowers with a single card that said, "The Adeyemi piece sold for 3 times its estimate. You were right about it. S." She kept the card. By week 5, she was not falling. She was choosing, which was a different thing. Slower, more deliberate, undertaken with clear eyes rather than the momentum of desperation. Sandro had returned to Seoul on business, and they had dinner twice. At a restaurant where neither of them would be recognized, where they talked for 4 hours, and the wine ran out, and they kept talking anyway. She curated a small private exhibition for 3 of his associates, mixing raw West African talent with European masters in a dialogue that the art world would later spend 2 years trying to understand. He kissed her for the first time against the wall of the gallery after the exhibition closed, when the last guest had left and they were alone among the art. Not rushed. The opposite of rushed. A man who had been patient for weeks and was now precise about exactly what he wanted and when, his hands on her face. Her back against the cool wall. The kind of kiss that doesn't move toward anything, that is simply and completely itself. She kissed him back and felt the last thread of obligation to Ji-hoon's break, to the 8 weeks, to the marriage that had been running on the other woman's timeline for a year, felt it simply release. Not dramatically, like a rope going slack. What followed was not gentle and was not performance. It was 2 people who had been moving toward each other with full awareness and now arrived. He was thorough and unhurried and completely present, which was the thing she had been missing without knowing the exact name of it. Someone's full attention, his hands on her skin in the dark like he was learning something he intended to know completely. His mouth against her throat saying things in Italian she understood entirely from their context. She came apart slowly and then all at once, and he held her through both. Afterward, she lay in the dark of his hotel suite with his arm around her and the city outside the window, and she felt quietly and without announcement, like herself. Not the managed, careful self she had been performing for Ji-hoon's comfort for the last year of their marriage. The actual one. "I'm filing for divorce," she said. "I know," he said. "That's not why I'm here. I know that too." His thumb moved slowly against her shoulder. "I would wait as long as it takes. I want to be clear about that. This is not contingent." She turned and looked at him in the low light. At this man who had pursued her slowly and honestly and with patience she had not expected. who had not once in 8 weeks pushed for anything she wasn't already choosing. "Don't wait," she said. Ji-hoon came back on a Sunday morning, thinner, eyes with the particular quality of a man who had spent time in silence thinking about himself and emerged with conclusions he felt good about. He had gifts: hand-carved wooden figures from a market, silk scarves, letters he had written but never sent during the 8 weeks, which he presented with the gravity of someone offering evidence of genuine reflection. He did not know what she knew. That was the detail that organized everything. He had come back with the quiet confidence of a man who had made a choice and intended to manage its aftermath with the same careful patience he had applied to building it. The break had been his way of buying time, not to think about their marriage, but to position the other life, to let Seo Ye-jin's situation stabilize, to return to Stella with a version of renewal that would require no confession because he had decided, from the beginning, that she would never need to know. He had miscalculated her thoroughness. He walked into the penthouse and stopped. New art on the walls, work she had acquired in Florence, raw and extraordinary. Nothing like the careful neutrality of what they had chosen together. A sleek black Maserati in the private garage that he discovered when the concierge mentioned it. And on Stella's left hand, where his modest band had sat for 3 years, a ring that caught the afternoon light with the particular authority of something chosen rather than given on a timeline. She was in the study, reviewing venue options on her laptop. Stella. His voice was warm, practiced, the voice of a man who had rehearsed the homecoming. "I've done a lot of thinking. I know I hurt you. I want to come home and do the work." She turned in the chair slowly. She had dressed carefully that morning, not for performance, but because she had understood that this conversation required her to be entirely herself, and being entirely herself included looking exactly like the woman she was. She met his eyes, and she did not smile. "I found the folder," she said. The rehearsed warmth left his face. "The lease for the Mapo apartment. Seo Ye-jin's name beside yours. The photographs. The child." She said each item the way she would present. Evidence. Clearly, without inflection. 8 months old in the most recent photo. Our marriage was deteriorating for a year. "I've done that arithmetic." Ji-hoon's mouth opened. Closed. The management was still trying to assemble itself, reaching for the explanation that would reframe this, looking for the angle that made it survivable. "Stella, the break wasn't for us," she said. "It was for you to manage the timing. You came back because you decided I didn't need to know, that you could maintain both structures and I would simply be grateful you'd returned." She stood. "I want you to understand that I know exactly what you did, not the version you were going to present, the actual version." His face cracked. The management fell away, and what was underneath was messier. Real grief, real guilt, the specific panic of a man who has been building something complicated and has just watched it become simple in the worst possible way. "I love you," he said. "Seo Ye-jin was... It wasn't what you think. It was before us, before our marriage was... She has your child, Ji-hoon. He has your face in the photographs. I don't need you to explain the timeline to me." "Please, I can fix this. I will handle it. You never have to handle it." The words arrived in her mouth with a particular flavor. That's the word. Handle. The same way you handled the break. The same way you were going to handle coming home. I am not a situation to be handled. She slid the divorce papers across the desk between them. The door opened behind him. Sandro Moretti filled the frame with the unhurried certainty of a man who owns whatever room he enters. He crossed to Stella without looking at Ji-hoon, pressed a kiss to her temple with the ease of long familiarity, and then turned and regarded the man standing at the desk with his hands on divorce paper. "To me," Sandro said, answering the question Ji-hoon had not yet finished asking. His voice carried no threat because it didn't need to. "I suggest you sign quickly, Mr. Kim." She had spent enough of her time on this. Ji-hoon looked between them. His eyes moved from Sandro's face to the way Stella leaned into that presence. Not performance, just comfort, the ease of someone being touched by hands they have already decided to trust. "This is revenge," Ji-hoon said. His voice had gone to something raw. "You're punishing me." Stella stepped forward. "I'm not punishing you. I'm showing you what consequence looks like, which is different. You made choices that assumed I would remain static." "I didn't remain static." She held his gaze. "You built a life beside our marriage and called it managing. I built a life beyond our marriage and called it what it is. We're simply both being honest now." "I have a child," Ji-hoon said. It came out quieter than everything else. Not a threat. Something more helpless than that. "Stella, I have a son, I know." Her voice didn't waver. He deserves a father who is fully present for him, not a father managing 2 households out of obligation. Sign the papers and go be present for your son. That's what being a man looks like. Something in his face collapsed entirely. The last architecture of the version of himself he had come back to present. The thoughtful, growth-oriented man returning from silence with gifts and letters. gave way to whatever was actually underneath. A man who had made choices and was now standing in their full consequence with no remaining angles. He signed. The divorce finalized in 60 days. Ji-hoon returned to his family's estate outside Seoul, and the story that circulated in the social circles they had occupied together was simply that the marriage had not survived. Nobody knew the details except the people Stella had told, which was only her lawyer and Maya, who responded to the full account, with the specific silence of someone confirming a suspicion they had been holding for 2 years. Soo Ye-jin and the child, his name was Seo-jin, the same as the date written on the back of the photograph, were provided for through the divorce settlement in terms Ji-hoon's lawyer had not expected Stella to agree to, but which she had insisted on, because the child had not made any choices and bore no responsibility for the ones his father had. Stella Moretti. She took the name with full awareness of everything it carried, thrived in the specific way that becomes possible when a person stops spending energy maintaining a structure that was never what it appeared. Sandro proposed on a yacht in the Mediterranean. No audience, no spectacle. One knee, the ring catching the last light of the day, and a promise that arrived without drama. You will never again be someone's option. You are my equal. Everything I have and everything I am. Tell me yes. She said yes before he finished the last sentence. Their wedding in Lake Como was every beautiful thing. African drummers alongside Italian orchestras, her natural curls crowned with diamonds, a custom gown that understood that her body was not a problem to be managed but an event to be celebrated. Sandro cried when she came down the aisle, real tears from a man whose emotional life ran deeper than his reputation suggested, and she laughed at the sight of it, which made the photographer earn every cent of his fee. The work they built together shifted things quietly. Art foundations in underserved communities across West Africa and Southern Europe, alliances that redirected cultural capital in ways that took the industry years to fully understand. Her gallery expanded to 3 cities. His operations moved in new directions that she was part of, not decorating but genuinely participating, bringing a vision he had not anticipated and could not now imagine operating without. Years later, at a gallery opening in New York, a journalist asked how she had gone from a Seoul penthouse and a marriage falling apart to heading one of the most quietly influential partnerships in the international art world. Stella smiled. Sandro's hand was at the small of her back, present and warm, and she thought briefly of the folder on the shelf in Ji-hoon's study, the lease agreement and the baby photographs and the specific, cold clarity of a woman having her own perception returned to her after a long and disorienting time of doubting it. A man asked me for space, she said, and the universe handed me an empire instead. She meant it as a complete answer. The end. Once again, this is Premium Stories, and thank you for joining us today. If you loved this story and want more of it, then don't forget to binge more of our stories, subscribe, like, and share to your friends and families. I will definitely appreciate it. See you in the next one. Bye.